We're in court right now. That's how it feels.
How so?
Uh, um, I feel like massive idle divorce or
Mm.
separation. Family were splitting up. Friend, the social structure was disintegrating around everything. And I feel like now we're in court somehow, trying to figure out the dynamics of how it disintegrated so quickly and find the reasons behind it, find the people that we can. Because I had a gut feeling that this would be something that would happen in Australia specifically. I mean, I rail on this country all the time, but I mean, in here and the rest of the world, you all saw what we did. So I mean, I'm not going to pretend that we were better than we were. We were the worst. Um, and I had a feeling that there would be a kind of collective shame over it that needed to be dealt with in a different way.
Mm.
And people are going to be looking at different ways of like protesting it, really pointing our fingers at people and saying you did this to me and therefore like I don't have enough fingers, and also uh, that that kind of kicks off a Hutu and Tutsi situation because we don't even have tribal eye on in order to figure out who was hurting who.
Mm.
It was intra-tribal violence in a lot of cases. So uh, we need a court of some description to deal with the tensions of everything. Because we can't put ourselves on trial in this process.
I think this is the court thing is very interesting. I've got the next juxtaposition. We have Pell in front of the county court and Novak on court. Ken has explained
Yeah.
20 coins should mean $20 to you in kilts. Let's see if that happens. Woo!
I'm rich.
We're rich. We're rich. Paper Eating Bear is asking, wasn't Pell targeted partly because of Vatican financial corruption? Yes, right. And this is the sort of layers of. I wish I'd thought that I was going to talk about Steve Walton, John Mearsheimer, and whatever that Harvard thing is. The amount of money sloshing around in the world, and that has. I mean, we've been sort of tip of the iceberg feeling of the pressure that we were all put under to get the jab, wear the masks, I mean, I'm not afraid right now. It feels sort of calm and everybody's exhausted, and I just, getting over this cold, and I'm even on campus now where, I had to fight my battle last year about masking and not vaccine and things like that. It's mostly just feels normal again, which is amnesiac and surreal at the same time. But surely all of the things that we've just been fighting didn't just vanish. That all of those energies and forces and desires to be in control of the world, they've still got to be, but it's like they've dissipated somehow. They can't be gone. They can't be gone. And Pell, okay, so Cardinal Pell died yesterday. And
Yes.
the responses to his death on the internet have been interesting because some are going, oh, good, another pedophile is dead. Apparently not, therefore, knowing much in detail about what happened in Melbourne when he was sent to jail and then exonerated and released. Or, as Paper Eating Bear is asking here, wasn't it, in fact, about something else? Right? That they needed Pell out of the way, though he'd been appointed in the position that he had by Francis. They needed Pell out of the way because he was about to expose some of this stuff. I have a book here written by one of my friends. Oh, look, and with a foreword by Professor Rachel Fulton Brown, whoever that is. So Milo wrote a book
never heard of
Never
her.
heard. I'd never heard of her. Nobody seems to have heard of her. I've not achieved. Oh no, wait. We have. We need to celebrate this properly. Our very first ever super chat from our friend Ken, which is now going to make us rich. We are now officially influencers. We've influenced Ken to give us $20.
And I didn't have to be nice to do it.
Yes, we did. We've been writing poetry with Ken for years now. I think this is internal funding that we've
You're
been
not
getting.
supposed to tell them that.
We could say that.
Now you're getting paid to be on the internet.
Oh,
no,
yes. Now we have
Ken.
officially been paid to be on the internet by Ken. Thank you, Ken. Yeah. He should get a lot of attention for giving us our first ever super chat.
True.
This is good.
Ken is amazing.
We're going to talk about Ken. We love Ken. Ken is a poet. We are friends with Ken. That Milo wrote this book back in 2018 on, it says, Diabolical: How Pope Francis Has Betrayed Clerical Abuse Victims Like Me and Why He Has to Go. Okay, so this is back in 2018, which means before Pell was actually tried and sentenced and sent to jail. And already before any of that happened, Milo understood what was going on. And I'm going to read you a little bit because I think it's important to read this into the record about why exactly Pell would end up in trouble and therefore in court, and therefore the kinds of invisible influences. Maybe that's our theme today. The invisible influences that are playing out in the way in which both Novak and Pell were gotten after in Australia, right? Okay, so this is Milo, what he says, this was in 2018. The Vatican Bank is one of the most disreputable and ineptly managed financial institutions in the world. For decades, it operated as a tax haven for wealthy Italians and as a money launderer's paradise. This may be topical to Tate, too. We don't know. Maybe not the Vatican, but right, money laundering and the flow of this kind of funding that's going everywhere. It is essentially an offshore bank in the middle of Rome, subject to its own laws, and was therefore, for a while, resistant to demands for information from the Italian authorities, not themselves always the perfect model of good governance. Reference to an article from The Guardian, Can Pope Francis Clean Up God's Bank? International media scrutiny of the bank is said to be one of the reasons Benedict XVI resigned, admitting privately to friends that he was unable to tackle the entrenched special interests in Rome. So why Benedict resigned? It was the money, among other things. After taking some time to admire Francis for wearing a plastic watch and dining in the Vatican canteen, The Guardian's Paul Vallely has given a decent account of how Cardinal George Pell, appointed by Francis, began a review of the bank's operations. Pell had successfully overhauled the church's finances in Sydney and Melbourne. The Australian son of a former heavyweight boxer, Pell is a political and doctrinal conservative who speaks aggressively and does not believe in man-made climate change. He is a cult hero among conservative Catholics. You can imagine what the Lavender Mafia think of him. Vallely notes grudgingly that, quote, for all his conservatism, Pell had for years been a vocal critic of the Roman Catholic bureaucracy and its corruption, end quote. Pell moved quickly and made enemies. A straight dealer to the point of unbearable bluntness, especially in the delicately perfumed and gold-embroidered world of the Holy See, Pell probably didn't anticipate getting tripped up by dirty tactics. In this case, stories leaked to the media about, you guessed it, clerical abuse. The press reports were coincidentally timed, arriving just as Pell's reforms of the bank began to take hold. It was alleged that Pell was soft on child abuse thanks to offhand comments he had made years before in typically ribald and direct Australian fashion. It was suggested that he may himself have some questions to answer about covering up abuse. Then the allegations widened to direct accusations of historic sex abuse, at which point Pell had to put his work at the bank on hold. Now Pell is back in Australia, this was in 2018, trying to clear his name, and his reforms are stalling, just as the intriguers intended. This is how efforts to clean up the Roman Catholic Church usually end. So we are mourning Cardinal Pell's passing and Benedict's passing because they were, in one way or another, both caught up in this cycle of corruption that we are clearly still going to be affected by, and yet we can't find who's doing it.
No. Suddenly we're all in Italy together. not sure who's behind the person on the balcony. And things are don't know exactly where all of as you said, like the energy that was swirling all around us is gone. It hasn't disappeared. It's just
right.
withdrawn direct pressure.
Well, we can feel that it's sort of pulled away, but we would be foolish. I mean, yes, it'd be very, very foolish to think that they've quit. Obviously, they haven't.
But
so what do we expect? I mean, do we look for what to expect? I mean, we wanted to do our doom spiral video today. It was like saying doom. It's like, but from where, right? And I was thinking earlier, it's like, are we going to do signs of the times? Are we going to do how everything's? This is the feeling of vacuity, chaos, emptiness. That's Rome.
Yeah.
Well.
What Rome feels like.
Oh yeah.
Time doesn't behave the same way as the rest for some reason. Maybe it's just me, but that was my impression. Rome is a strange place.
Well, from what you're telling me, Australia is a strange place too. Your dream time, and your sense of are we in the present in these stories to the degree to which. That's Pell in Melbourne, right? And is that Novak in Melbourne, right? That what's going on down there in Melbourne? What kind of energy nexus do you have? We had some. What else were you worrying about? Now?
That city was originally going to be called Batmania.
The city Melbourne was going to be called Batmania.
Yeah, Batmania.
Batmania.
Yeah,
like
Batman.
Bats, like Batman's. Chat, but I'm reading chats now because they're helping us think through this through. The Vatican was cut off of SWIFT the week Benedict decided to resign the papacy. That's yes. Okay, so the banking energy is here. SWIFT access was then immediately restored to the Vatican, but they were showing they could do it. Benedict resigns. They cut SWIFT off. Here it is. Like exactly who is the most powerful and my take at the moment is, and we're sort of playing with this in the Drake Alchemicus that we're writing right now. The dragon doesn't really manifest in any one character. The dragon is this, it's like, in Excalibur when Merlin's talking about the dragon's breath, and it's like, where is the dragon? It's somehow out there. It's somehow very, very real. But anytime you try to pin it on a particular person, it's not that person. That person just turns back into a human being that the dragon abandons.
Mm-hmm.
Isaiah and Annie Z say, on the whole spookiness of hidden power, we have seriously forgotten that political power is people. Well, and this is, the shamans were both meant to be allegedly representing popular movements and yet are being deployed theoretically because I think that the Brazilian guy may be mimicking the Q shaman, but whatever, right? One way or the other, there's a recognition of the power of the crowd, the populace, and the desire of these guys on balconies or in banks or in courtrooms or in Congress to control them. But, I used to think until 2 weeks ago when I got this cold, I used to think that I was paying sufficient attention that I was going to be able to watch all this story play out and it was going to be, going to happen in the way that I was predicting it. And I don't even feel like Scott Adams now because I'm not claiming that I ever did predict things, but I did predict things properly in my own head and on my blog 3 years ago with the COVID stuff. And I don't know what's going to happen now.